The scene of Madeline Kahn in the dressing room with Cleven Little has become an integral part of the movie Blazing Saddles, which is not only a comedy classic but also a controversial satirical masterpiece. You may have watched the movie many times and feel like you know every detail, but you may have missed a funny mistake right in front of your eyes. Let's take a look at the most interesting on-screen mistakes that you probably never noticed. Do you remember this movie? Okay, maybe you remember the plot, but I'll take you deeper into it. Blazing Saddles, a comedy that was released in 1974 and is not like other comedies that are available today. A groundbreaking comedy western that defied every norm and standard. It was a western that defied every rule that had ever been established. The film, directed by Mel Brooks, included several A-list performers, such as Madeline Kahn, Gene Wilder, and Cleven Little, amongst others, and it was the film that brought them together. Additionally, Brooks himself provided the voices for a few minor characters and appeared in 2 distinct roles. He also provided the voices for a few minor characters. Blazing Saddles is an American comedy that is both well-liked and occasionally condemned for its confrontational nature. This is because the film has a distinctive combination of slapstick and biting satire, which is a combination that is unique to the film. Is there anything that you are aware of that this wild western was on the edge of getting removed from the market before it was even shown in theaters? There are several instances of revolt, debate, and even some truly odd incidents that take place during the film's turbulent and defiant history. In the year 1972, a young screenwriter by the name of Andrew Bergman invented the concept that would later become known as the idea. A brief synopsis of his Western Tex-Ex reveals that the protagonist is a black sheriff who, amid a community that is at risk of being destroyed, saves a little town from being destroyed by a corrupt developer. The 30-page plan, on the other hand, was just a rough draft, and it required a great lot more work before it could be enlarged into a full-fledged image and presented to the public. That was the moment that Mel Brooks became involved in the current scenario. Even though his most recent picture, The Producers, had garnered a great deal of critical acclaim, Mel Brooks was not exactly flush with cash when he was 46 years old. In addition to being unemployed and living in abject poverty, he was also expecting a child. After being approached by Warner Brothers with the proposition of adapting Bergman's work, he made the most of the opportunity that was presented to him. In Brooks's perspective, the objective was to create the most absurd movie that had ever been produced in the history of filmmaking. In addition to making fun of the westerns that he saw when he was a youngster, he was also capable of poking fun at other forms of racism. Nevertheless, I was well aware that this would not be a simple task to do. There was hostility to Brooks from the very beginning of the probe till the very current moment. Considering that Ted Ashley, the chairman of Warner Brothers, thought that the picture was too obscene, he threatened to have it buried. John Wayne, on the other hand, did not accept the job with the reason that he thought it was too sexually explicit. With Brooks, on the other hand, there was no room for compromise. He was able to accomplish his goals as a direct result of his unwavering drive. After Brooks declared that it was the funniest movie that had ever been created, the movie went on to create a tremendous amount of money at the box office. But the road to success is long and difficult, starting with finding actors. How did this journey go? Let's follow along, determined to cross the line. Writers such as Alan Ugar, Andrew Bergman, Norman Steinberg, and the late great Richard Pryor, who was a comedian, are among the notable writers that Brooks has compiled. Even though Pryor was dealing with a great deal of difficulties in his personal life, Brooks regarded him as the greatest stand-up comic of all time. For the entirety of Pryor's life, anarchy was the norm. And during the time that they were working together on a piece of writing, he had a history of substance misuse and had once offered Brooks cocaine. Brooks would react with a sardonic, "Me?" At the very last minute before lunch, it is not feasible. Although Pryor was involved in the writing of the script, Warner Brothers did not choose to cast him in the leading role of Black Bart the sheriff. Following his most recent arrest for narcotics possession, his insurance company was unwilling to insure him, and they referred to him as a well-known sniffer. In light of this, Pryor and Brooks tried out about 100 different performers before ultimately deciding to cast Cleven Little, a dynamic Broadway performer who is an excellent choice for the character. "I look Cuban, but that guy is so black, he's going to frighten the S out of that town," Pryor stated, confirming the information that was presented. The writing, on the other hand, had its own set of challenges. Even though it was challenging for them to do so, Pryor insisted that the white scribes incorporate racial comments into the film. According to what he said, our story is marked by racial prejudice. Not even a single word, that's all. If we take it away from the rednecks, the win of the black sheriff will have a more significant influence. Contrary to what he had anticipated, the humorous components of the movie did more than just ridicule prejudice. They showed it. The erudite lawman who is carrying a Gucci saddlebag can outsmart the bigots who are attempting to discredit Sheriff Bart when they make their effort. Do you remember the most famous scene? Or what do you think is the most famous scene? It will be revealed right after this. The most famous scene. The song I Get No Kick from Champagne by Cole Porter is performed by Bart and his black co-workers in one of the most famous sequences. This is done in response to a request for a song that is associated with the good old work. The awkward performance of Decamptown Races by the White Cowboys has the potential to become a funny scenario. In a later scene, when the villagers are plotting his murder, Bart pulls off a clever escape. He pretends to be a hostage and even points the gun to his head to get away. On the other hand, he makes a joke about how stupid they are and how wonderful they are. Within the context of a comedy, Blazing Saddles dares to mock racism for what it is: a farce. Because of his stubborn personality, Brooks turned every obstacle into a humorous opportunity for him to take advantage of. There were a few individuals who attempted to have some aspects of the photograph banned, but Brooks remained steadfast in his position. Also, the audience went crazy over that. It has not lost its revolutionary position as a comedy classic that reveals how, at times, the force of humor can win against intolerance. This is something that has not changed nearly half a century after it was first released. The film Blazing Saddles defies categorization and demonstrates that laughter is the most effective medication for dealing with the absurdity of life. This is true regardless of whether the film is considered a courageous attack against racism or a humorous take on other westerns. But there are still plenty of hidden BTS facts and bloopers that you might not know about. What are those mistakes? Let's take a look behind the scenes to find out. Behind the scenes of Blazing Saddles. After Mel Brooks submitted the idea to the film business, they had high hopes for Blazing Saddles and were looking forward to seeing it. The crux of the issue is that Brooks had previously produced the comedic film The Producers, which received widespread critical praise. On the other hand, when the executives at Warner Brothers saw the film for the very first time, they were not impressed in the slightest. Mel was the source of the uneasy laughter that was heard, and he was responsible for a significant portion of it. One of the executives even claimed that it was inappropriate for the people who live in the United States of America to be exposed to. Regardless of this, Brooks did not make any concessions. Because of the humorous content that was included in the film, he felt confident that members of the audience would take pleasure in seeing it. Even though the studio was pessimistic about its prospects, he was hopeful about its possibilities. Indeed, he was of the right mind. When it was finally shown in theaters, the movie Blazing Saddles was a spectacular hit, demonstrating that many people who had misgivings about it were mistaken. The path that led to that point of accomplishment was not a simple one to undertake. The studio's management was ready to dismiss the movie for whatever reason they saw fit. John Calley, the president of Warner Brothers, insisted on a limited release in order to test the waters, and he picked cities along the lines of New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles as the places for the distribution of the film. It would be possible for them to conceal the fact that the movie was a disaster in a manner that was not obvious to everyone. However, by the time the summer was out, it had become their single that had seen the greatest amount of success. The self-assurance that Brooks had displayed had paid off in a significant manner, and even more, laughter continued to arrive. Afterward, the ensemble cast arrived on the scene. Harvey Korman was the actor who played the part of Hedley Lamar, the perfect counterpoint to the protagonist. Were you aware that there was a genuine Hedley Lamar? Her acting career covered the decades of the 1930s through the 1950s. Her career began in the 1930s. In addition, the fact that their names were so similar did not in any way amuse her about the situation. He joked about the possibility of legal action being taken against him. Indeed, he was of the right mind. On the other hand, Brooks and Lamar were able to come to an agreement outside of the courtroom on their own. Simply put, This is yet another peculiar narrative that may be added to the already colorful history of the picture. There is no wrongdoing or an offense. It is important to keep in mind that Alex Karras played the part of Mongo, the powerful individual who was responsible for bringing down Sheriff Bart. It would be a mistake to overlook him. Karras was a renowned character in the world of football when he was active in the sport earlier in his career. His career spanned 12 seasons with the Detroit Lions, during which he was named for the All-Pro team 9 times and was featured on the National Football League's All-Decade squad during the 1960s. His career was highlighted by his inclusion on the All-Decade team. There were not many people who were aware of the fact that he had participated in this specific sport prior to his joining the cast of Blazing Saddles. Karras is considered to be one of the many remarkable talents that are present on the set. This is because he was able to make such a seamless transition from football to the film industry. It is important to remember that Madeline Kahn, who played the part of Lily Von Stuck, should also be included in the discussion of talent. Kahn was the target of Brooks's attention from the very beginning of the journey. It was not a secret to him that she possessed the knowledge and abilities required to properly portray the hilarious role. During the audition, he demanded to see her legs, which caught her off guard. On the other hand, he surprised her. The comment that Kahn made was, "Oh, you're that kind of guy." This is the most intelligent Kahn has ever been. In a short amount of time, Brooks made it quite obvious that the role was a parody of Marlene Dietrich, who was noted for her legs, and that he wanted to see whether or not Kahn was capable of effectively carrying off the image. When she was asked the question, her reply consisted of a smile and a warning. Touching is not going to be allowed. According to the proverb, the rest is history. The film's incisive comedy was immortalized as a result of its legendary status. Considering how the writers of Blazing Saddles had migrated from cinema to stage, there was even debate about bringing the show to Broadway, as they had done before. This occurred as a result of the fact that the concert had performed exceptionally well. Brooks, on the other hand, had a skeptical mind. As he considered the question, he worried whether or not audiences in the contemporary day would like the unvarnished comedy that had made the movie so popular. Despite the fact that it is not something that I would shrink away from, he stated that he was uncertain as to whether or not I would be able to get away with it. The essence of Blazing Saddles is still alive and well, although key aspects of the story have evolved. Even after earning all of this popularity, Brooks never hesitated to offer appreciation for his work. He was ever so proud of his accomplishments. Through the addition of the statement, "Billy Wilder's film is extremely funny, but scene for scene, there are more laughs in my movie," he boldly declared that Blazing Saddles was the best movie that had ever been produced. Who could come to a different conclusion than him? The movie continues to get praise for its daring comedy and insightful reflection on society, even though a lot of time has passed since it was released. It should not come as much of a surprise that Mel Brooks believes it to be among the most humorous films of all time since it was released. Mainly because, according to his own words, my movie has more laughs than any other film about scene for scene. And isn't that what makes a classic? Speaking of that, let's have a look at some bloopers that hardly got noticed. Errors and hidden details. The film company had great expectations for Blazing Saddles when Mel Brooks presented the idea to them. Brooks had previously produced the critically acclaimed comedy The Producers. However, when the executives at Warner Brothers viewed the movie for the first time, they were not impressed in the least. To a large extent, Mel himself was the source of the anxious laughing that was heard. It was even suggested by one executive that it was too vulgar for the citizens of the United States. Despite this, Brooks did not compromise. He was certain that the audience would enjoy the movie because of the humor that was presented in it. He was optimistic about its possibilities, even though the studio was not. Indeed, he was correct. The film Blazing Saddles was a smashing success when it was ultimately released in theaters, proving many who had doubts about it wrong. It wasn't an easy journey to get to that point of achievement. The executives of the studio were prepared to disregard the movie. The president of Warner Brothers, John Calley, insisted on a limited release to test the waters, and he chose cities such as New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles as the locations for the distribution. They would be able to cover up the fact that the movie was a failure subtly. However, by the time the summer was out, it had become their most successful single. Brooks's self-assurance had paid off hugely, and the laughter continued to come. Next, there came the ensemble cast. The role of Hedley Lamar, the ideal antagonist, was portrayed by Harvey Korman. Nevertheless, were you aware that there was a genuine Hedley Lamar? Her career as an actor spanned the decades of the 1930s through the 1950s, and the fact that their names were so similar did not amuse her in any way. He made a joke about how it might result in a lawsuit. Indeed, he was correct. However, Brooks and Lamar were able to settle outside of the courtroom. This is simply another weird anecdote to add to the film's already colorful history. There is no harm, no foul. Remember that Alex Karras portrayed the role of Mongo, the strong guy who was dispatched to take down Sheriff Bart. Let's not forget about him. Earlier in his career, Karras was a legendary figure in the world of football. His career spanned 12 seasons with the Detroit Lions, during which he was selected for the All-Pro team 9 times and was included on the National Football League's All-Decade squad during the 1960s. When he joined the cast of Blazing Saddles, not many people were aware of the fact that he had experienced this particular sport. Because Karras was able to make such a smooth transition from football to cinema, he is considered to be one of the many exceptional talents that are present on the set. When we talk about skill, we should also include Madeleine Kahn, who performed the role of Lily von Stuck. From the very beginning, Brooks had his sights set on Kahn. He was aware that she had the necessary skills to successfully perform the humorous part. On the other hand, he took her by surprise when he asked to view her legs during the audition. Kahn remarked, "Oh, you're that kind of guy." Kahn is as smart as he has ever been. Swiftly, Brooks made it clear that the character was a spoof of Marlene Dietrich, who was famous for her legs, and that he needed to see whether or not Kahn could successfully carry off the appearance. A smile and a caution were her responses to the question, "There will be no touching." The rest, as they say, is history. Legendary status was bestowed on the film's sharp comedy. There was even discussion about moving Blazing Saddles to Broadway, similar to how the creators had transitioned from film to stage. This was because the show had been so successful. For his part, Brooks was skeptical. He pondered whether or not moviegoers in the modern day would like the unfiltered comedy that had made the movie so popular. "It is not something that I would shy away from, but I am not sure if I would be able to get away with it," he said. Even if certain things have changed, the spirit of Blazing Saddles continues to live on. Brooks was never bashful about providing praise for his work, even after achieving all of this fame. By adding, "Billy Wilder's film is extremely funny, but scene for scene, there are more laughs in my movie," he boldly asserted that Blazing Saddles was the greatest movie that had ever been created. And who could disagree with him? Despite the passage of time, the film continues to be lauded for its bold comedy and critical commentary on society. It is hardly surprising that Mel Brooks considers it to be one of the most hilarious movies of all time. Because according to his statements, "My movie has more laughs than any other film, scene for scene." But while some love it, others consider it to be a racist movie. Why is Blazing Saddles labeled as a racist movie? The controversies. It is a film that has generated a great deal of controversy throughout its existence, particularly over how it employs comedy to tackle delicate subjects such as racism and stereotypes. As of late, there has been considerable criticism directed at the movie, with some individuals claiming that it is racist. But Whoopi Goldberg, who is both an actress and a comedian, is not in the least bit in agreement with that. On The View, Goldberg voiced her support for the movie when it was brought up in a conversation that was taking place. She contended that the film deals with the issue of racism in a manner that provokes both thought and laughter. She underlined that it addresses racism by addressing it in a manner that is direct, straightforward, and forthright, causing you to think and laugh about it. It is not merely a matter of race, in her opinion. All kinds of problems are addressed by it. Goldberg made the observation that Blazing Saddles would still be relevant in the modern era due to the fact that it is an excellent comedy that is able to hammer heavily on significant subjects. The reviewers were given a funny warning, which was as follows: "Leave my Blazing Saddles alone and don't make me come for you." A statement made by Mindy Kaling in which she stated that a program like The Office could not be produced in the present day owing to the unsuitable characters it would have, ignited this topic. Goldberg disagreed, suggesting that humor is appropriate in some situations and may be used to initiate difficult talks. In addition, Sarah Haynes, another co-host, concurred with Goldberg's assessment of the situation. She expressed the belief that there ought to be a holy zone for comedians. It was her view that comedians should challenge established norms. According to Haynes, laughter is the most effective cure for life and everything that it delivers. She feels that comedy enables us to confront the unavoidable sadness that is a part of life. But what makes Blazing Saddles so controversial and yet so compelling? Have you wondered about that? Stay tuned, the answer will be right here. Decoding attraction. I'm referring to how Mel Brooks used humor to combat not only racism, but also other forms of prejudice. The film does not only concentrate on making fun of a single group or stereotype. Rather, it targets every one of them individually. The situation is similar to a comedic free-for-all in which no one is spared. And this is precisely what makes it such a remarkable thing. This is the art of satire, an in-depth examination of the Blazing Saddles. Upon initial inspection, Blazing Saddles appears to be a conventional Western picture, complete with cowboys, a small town, and a significant number of gunfights. It is, however, a great deal more than that. To turn the genre on its head, it makes use of all the aspects that are often associated with Westerns, such as dusty saloons, evil villains wearing black hats, and daring sheriffs. The approach that Brooks took when making his picture was revolutionary. In the film, Cleavon Little plays the role of a black sheriff who works in a community that is rife with racism. From the very beginning, it confronts racism head-on by using comedy as a means of forcing individuals to confront their own prejudices. Although there are certain situations that may appear upsetting or insulting, that is exactly the objective. In order to achieve his goal, Brooks wants the audience to experience discomfort, to ponder, and finally to laugh. He is well aware that laughing is a method that might cause people to ponder. Blazing Saddles is not only making fun of things, rather it is making fun of the fundamental core of many societal problems. As an illustration, there is a musical segment in the film titled The French Mistake, in which the protagonists execute a showy dance routine that seems to make fun of homosexual stereotypes. At first glance, it would appear to be an assault on the LGBTQ+ community. Yet in reality, it is quite contrary to that perception. This sequence pokes fun at the audience's preconceived notions and encourages them to look farther than what is immediately apparent. Subverting expectations and flipping stereotypes on their heads are the two main focuses of this endeavor. In doing so, it was one of the first Hollywood westerns to present gays in a light that was neither sad nor negative. This made it a pioneer in the field. But the question is, why does satire matter in comedy? The importance of irony in comedy. The ability of Mel Brooks to utilize humor as a vehicle for social critique is the source of his unparalleled brilliance. The films he has directed, such as Blazing Saddles, are not only entertaining but also make a point. It is via the use of exaggerated stereotypes that he causes us to question the very existence of such prejudices in the first place. That is the true force that satire possesses. It is because of this that Blazing Saddles continues to be so meaningful even after all these years. Take, for example, the slogan of the film, which states that a saga should never be given a break. When combined with another relevant phrase, this slogan Brooks was able to comment on racial and cultural conflicts through the use of comedy, which is highlighted in The Jazz Singer. The Jazz Singer was a film that was considered controversial during its period because it dealt with topics such as defiance against convention and racial performance. With a more pointed comic edge, Blazing Saddles accomplishes the same goal as its predecessor. Brooks is well known for his ability to create pictures that are not just audacious, but also intellectual. In the film Blazing Saddles, he makes fun of everything, from the Western genre to the expectations of the audience. The film does not easily fit into any one of the categories that are available, and this is precisely the reason why it is so successful. It's a comedy that employs humor to challenge conventions and make a statement about something. In addition, this leads us back to the point that Whoopi Goldberg made, which is that comedy like this should be around. Having comedians who are able to make us laugh at ourselves and challenge the conventions is something that is really essential. And when we look in the mirror, we may not always like what we see, but that's good. Comedy is a mirror. If we are unable to leave comedians alone, And if they cease to push the boundaries of what is considered acceptable, then we are all going to be on the receiving end of it, as Sarah Haynes said. Even though it may cause us to feel a bit uneasy at times, this serves as a reminder that comedy has the potential to bring people together and serve as a unifying force. Therefore, should we consider Blazing Saddles to be a racist film? Alternatively, should we take it for what it is, a crisp and witty comedy that uses humor to provoke thought in its audience? Do not force me to come after you, as Whoopi Goldberg would emphatically advise. It may be time for you to watch Blazing Saddles once more and make your own decision. When Mel Brooks refused to make any changes to his film, he said, "Leave my blazing saddles alone. Don't make me come for you." This is the best way to summarize the situation. It was a statement that was uncompromising and represented the attitude of the film itself, which was one of independence and fearlessness. The film Blazing Saddles was met with mostly excellent reviews, despite the controversy that surrounded it. Not only did it receive 3 nominations for Academy Awards, but it also made it to the 6th slot on the list of the 100 most hilarious films produced in the United States by the American Film Institute. The movie certainly had an indelible influence on the world of humor and movies. It made people laugh, ponder, and even wriggle in their seats. It is precisely this aspect that makes it so unforgettable. When you watch Blazing Saddles again, make sure to look more closely at the characters. There is a possibility that you may discover something fresh, such as a blunder, a hidden humor, or a little element that increases the overall enjoyment of the movie. There is always something new to learn about this comic classic, even after 50 years have passed since it was first released. Did you spot any other confusing details? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more interesting updates. Thank you and see you in the next